Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today in Thun, Switzerland, visiting B&T, and we are taking a look today at their 40mm riot-control grenade launcher. It's not really a grenade, it's just a riot-control rubber projectile. This is called the GL06 or GL06 because it was developed specifically for a French riot-control launcher tender in 2006. Now, when this happens, B&T has actually been working on they call this SIR ammunition, S-I-R, so the pronunciation in English would be probably a little different, but this is Safe Impact Round, S-I-R. And it is essentially a rubber projectile, soft rubber projectile on a hard rubber base in a reusable plastic case, propelled by a blank cartridge. So we'll take a closer look at this in a minute, but the idea was it would be a very low-cost, reusable, and safely non-lethal projectile to use in this sort of launcher. However, despite the fact that they'd been working on the ammunition, when this tender was released by the French, B&T didn't actually have a launcher available. But it's B&T, so their reaction was kind of like, well, how hard could the launcher be? We'll just knock one together. And in 6 weeks, they did. And it was this. So it is a single-shot 40mm rifled barrel. They took the stock off of, well, they had this stock design already around as a component part for MP5s or for the APC-9 PCC. And then the fire control mechanism, definitely the hardest, the most complicated part, rather than develop it themselves, they had a very close working relationship with H&K at the time, and they just asked HK, hey, can we buy some basically sets of trigger parts from your underbarrel grenade launcher, I think it's the AG-36, the underbarrel launcher for the G-36 rifle. Can we just like buy some of those? We're doing this less lethal tender. It's not a product that HK competes with. And HK said, yeah, that's fine, and sold them some parts. They assemble the thing together. The design concept is primarily that it has to be extremely easy to use. The French want a very simple training regimen. They want this to be totally idiot-proof. So there is no extractor in the gun. You open it up. This plastic case doesn't really expand when it fires, so the cases just drop out. It's a single finger push to open the barrel. There was no manual safety on the gun. It was just a heavy double-action trigger pull. It doesn't have to be a modular unit. It wasn't intended to be mounted also under a rifle, so it's just a standalone launcher. Very simple. They put some plastic iron sights on it, as well as Picatinny rail for an optic, and that's pretty much the design. They send it off to the French, and lo and behold, they win the tender. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this, and then I'll talk about the whoopsie with the ammunition and the future development of the system. All right, so here's the basic launcher. You have a rail on top for an optic like this. There's also a tri-rail down here for whatever else you want to put on it. In the US at least, these are generally shipped with an optic and also with a vertical front grip. That's a popular element. Anyway, controls on it are very simple. There's one big ambidextrous button here. Push that forward, and it pops the barrel open like that. You can then take your cartridge, drop it in, close, and then you have a heavy double-action trigger pull. Now, the one element that did change after this gun was adopted by the French is that they asked for a manual safety. So B&T kind of kludged in this crossbolt safety as an afterthought because it wasn't actually requested, wasn't on the original submission. So with that in the fire position, once you have your round loaded, you just have a heavy double-action trigger pull to fire the round, and then pop it back open, pull the cartridge out, and reload. It's kind of cool that we actually have a cutaway example here as well, so you can see how the trigger mechanism is working right there. Then I've just sat the projectile in. It would go right about there. So this is the plastic cartridge, and then in the center of it you have a brass, that is in by CIP nomenclature, that is a 9mm R blank cartridge. It's kind of like, it's basically a 380 size cartridge, but it's got a rim on it, and that just gets pressed into the seat of the cartridge there. And it is solely, the projectile is solely propelled by the blank charge here. There's no additional powder charge in the round. Now, two interesting elements from the manufacturing process here. First off is, once B&T won the contract, they went back to HK, because now of course they have to make like a couple thousand of these things. They went back to HK to get more fire control parts, and HK was no longer super happy about providing them, and actually refused to sell them additional trigger parts. So since they had already paid the licensing to use the parts and received the first batch of parts, B&T was able to legally just go ahead and start up manufacture themselves. So as these are currently produced, they're all B&T made parts instead of ones subcontracted to HK. The other interesting element here is that this uses a 12 groove barrel, where 6 grooves is really the standard for 40 millimeter. And that came about basically through some issues. The B&T is making their own barrels for this. This is an aluminum barrel. Because these cartridges have just a plastic engagement ring here that engages the rifling, they don't need to be like cold hammer forged, super high quality steel barrels. Aluminum is fine. This, by the way, is safe to fire with HE rounds. It's not intended to, but it is strong enough to fire the standard low pressure 40 millimeter HE. But the metal driving band of most HE rounds will pretty quickly chew up this aluminum rifling in the barrel. So it's not meant for HE, but it's also not accident prone in case you happen to run one. Anyway, they had some issues with the tooling trying to manufacture 6 groove barrels. And at one point, just as basically a what the heck, let's try this, took a 6 groove barrel, stuck it back in the machine, rotated, ran it through the same rifling program, and ended up with a 12 groove barrel. And in testing, found that that 12 groove barrel was really remarkably accurate, much more so than their 6 groove barrels. And so they just stuck with it. That system worked, and that ended up being one of the strong points of the launcher, is it's apparently remarkably accurate for a 40 millimeter less lethal launcher. Now, you saw I have 2 versions of this ammo, the yellow one and the black one. The projectiles are exactly the same, just different colors to distinguish them. And by the way, this is the full proper case less the blanket has a metal reinforcement in there. This one is missing the reinforcement at this point. It's just a demo round. At any rate, the stippling on here, like the golf ball stippling, is not there for accuracy. This is actually there to improve the aerodynamics of the round so that it loses velocity more slowly than a simple round nose projectile. That's exactly the reason why golf balls have this texturing to them, and that just means the projectile continues, well, it has a longer effective range. The 2 different colors are distinguished by the power level of the blank charges used in them. The yellow is the standard SIR round, and it has a muzzle velocity of 85 meters a second. That's about 280 feet per second. The black one is the higher pressure round, that's SIR-X, and that's 105 meters per second, or about 345 feet per second. So this guy is good with a minimum safety distance of 1 meter out to 50. The black one, you need a minimum distance of about 5 meters, but it's good out to 70. So, I guess it's just a question of how motivated your rioters are, which one of these you want to choose. Apparently, they do hurt pretty significantly. They're like taking a pretty solid punch, but they won't kill a person. When this is fired, like I said, there's no powder charge in here. It's just the blank round that projects it. You have a soft rubber tip on the round, and then this is a hard plastic casing. You've got this driving band, just plastic, so it engages with the aluminum. And then for training, these can be collected up. They recommend hanging a sheet or a net or something so they don't impact a hard surface. But as long as they're decelerated by something like hitting a blanket, these are reusable. Like B&T claims 20 rounds reusability. They have some studies from some customers that suggest it's actually more than that. The cases are equally reusable. And the idea here is for training, you don't have to buy new ammunition. In actual field use, this is one-time use stuff. In theory, you could go collect the projectiles, but you probably wouldn't. But for training, you can dramatically reduce cost by just reloading the cases. It's just the cost of new blank cartridges, which are pretty cheap. All right, so here's where things get kind of funny. The French have a tender for the launcher, and then they also have a tender for the ammunition, because most of the companies submitting to this aren't going to have both. B&T was a bit of an exception in that. Well, B&T wins the tender for the launcher, and their ammunition, because it's reusable, is substantially cheaper than basically anything else out on the market. Now, like I said, you wouldn't be reusing this. Like, you're not going to go out after the riot and collect up the projectiles to reuse them. But what this means is in training, you can reload the ammo and reuse it. So you can train substantially without having nearly the expense of the ammunition that's one-time use only. So they submit this, and the expectation was, I think, probably higher that they'd win the ammo than the launcher. They end up not winning the ammo tender, as it turns out, because their agent in France submitted the whole paperwork package and forgot to sign it. And so, thanks to bureaucracy, because it's not signed, it's not technically complete, and it was not entered into the competition, just into the trash can. Which was also a bummer to the French procurement guys when they discovered that they could have saved 50% of what they ended up spending on ammo. But where this sort of came back to bite B&T, aside from not getting a big contract for the ammunition, is these launchers actually got some notoriety during the Yellow Vest protests, the Gilets jaunes, where the French police were using some other ammunition and shot a bunch of people with these things, and actually seriously injured one or two or a couple guys with them, which resulted in some protests of B&T, because it was an identifiable B&T launcher, which the B&T guys didn't really like, because it wasn't their ammunition. Like, if you'd used our ammo, it wouldn't have hurt people, and it would have been cheaper. But ultimately, in the wake of this being adopted by the French, it's also been purchased by a bunch of other agencies, a bunch of other governments. There are elements, I think the US federal penitentiary system has purchased a version with a slightly different barrel length, and other countries have also been interested, because it really is a very cost-effective ammunition system. That's where your biggest cost is for a gun like this. It's one thing to buy the guns, but then if you're actually going to use them and train with them, the ammunition cost quickly becomes the biggest component of the overall project. So if you can reload the ammo, excellent. And of course, the accuracy doesn't hurt. So we are going to take this one, we're going to head down to the range and do some shooting with it, because they keep claiming to me that this thing is super duper accurate, and I want to find out for myself. All right, we are at the range now. I'm going to start with some of the yellow rounds. That's the standard velocity. It's 85 meters per second. And I have a target, silhouette target paper at about 20 yards. So let's see what sort of group I can make. These, by the way, are all reloaded cartridges. So they talk about this being reusable ammunition. We're going to find out what the accuracy is of the specifically reloaded second or third use projectiles. So I just loaded around. There's no, well, there is a manual safety crossbolt. It's off, and we just have a heavy trigger. Well, that was pretty much a perfect shot. Nice. Well, let's see if I can do it again. A little bit high. That one's right between the first two. The recoil on this, by the way, is basically nothing. This is like, the trigger pull is harder than the recoil is. I think I'm going to cut that target in half at this rate. Last one of my yellows. That's not a bad group. That's pretty cool. All right, now I have a second target, and we're going to try some of the higher power black rounds. All right, so the black rounds are the more powerful ones, a little more oomph for more dedicated rioters. Little bit higher. That would have been unpleasant to get hit with. That would have been really unpleasant to get hit with. Maybe, so this is 0. There is a point of impact difference because of the velocity difference. And this one is shooting a little bit high. Maybe I should aim low, but I'm not gonna. This is a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I think these are a little bit too powerful to get two of and put on some hockey masks and play live action force on force with. Can't even see that hole because it went right through the first hole. And so did that one. I'm getting better with this. All right, that's a lot of fun. Super easy, super intuitive to use. It's just round in, close, fire, open, round out, done. That is a lot of fun. And I can see why these are popular with a wide variety of law enforcement agencies. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.